We are here today with Captain Chuck Naiser. Captain Naiser is the former president of the CCA and an avid fly fishing guide here in South Texas. Hello, Chuck. How are you today?
Well, I'm doing good. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. I got to correct. I'm not the former president of CCA.
Okay, sorry.
No, I mean, don't be sorry. I'd be proud if I was. They never would let me ascend to that. They wanted to keep me with a mop and a broom to go clean.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably the more important job. So
But
we'll
I
just
was heavily involved, and I guess we'll get into that later.
yeah, sure. Well, why not? Let's just do that now. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about the Flatsworthy organization also and what you do as a fishing captain. Yeah.
Uh, that's a mouthful.
I know
So
it is. It's a lot.
start with the fishing deal. I've been a captain here and a guide in Rockport since 1992, and I'm proud to say I helped usher fly fishing into the community here
Nice.
to develop that sport. It's changed a lot. Man, I don't even know what to say about it. It's it's changed in many ways. Participation, the quality has changed in a lot of ways. This was in the 90s. This was a world-class destination for people to come in from all over. And it was interesting because I had a lot of people from the mountain states and out west, and you go like, why do they like to come to Rockport? I don't have mountains, I don't have streams, I don't have snow. What's the lure? I mean, when that's no pun intended, but why would you come year after year after year when it's just flat prairie? And the answer was they enjoyed seeing the flat prairie, the beautiful savannas of spartina grass that waved in the winds and was had gorgeous patterns to it. But the thing that really got them was how much wildlife was here, the birds, and with certain of these people, it's beyond the fishing aspect; it's the experience. So anyway, I did mean to get off on that because it's an important issue about the value of what we have as far as a resource here.
Oh yeah.
The oh gosh, Flatsworthy. Well, I started that 8 years ago in response to I coined a word, and I guess it's okay to use it here. It's called jackassery. This ill behavior towards each other, towards the resource. When you watch it, I came to Rockport in 1967. Was a big weekend traveler, bought a house here in 1980. So I've seen a lot of things. And I have a love for this place and an admiration. And when you see people doing things that are damaging to it, I guess you can do two things. You can go off and drink, or you can just stand up and say, wait a minute. And so I chose that path. I said, I don't have a badge, I don't have a gun. I can't tell people what to do or how to behave, but I can bring it forward in a narrative and start talking about it. And that's what Flatsworthy was. I had no end game. I didn't know where it would go. It changed from the etiquette between user groups. Harvey changed it totally in that it interrupted. We were doing a lot of meetings and talking and writing and videos about how to behave out here. And then Harvey comes along, and you know what it did? It interrupted everything for 6, 8, 9 months.
You're talking about Hurricane Harvey. Just
Yes.
so everybody knows.
Yeah, not the drink or anything, but yeah, hurricane. I'm sorry. I just,
That's okay.
yeah. So as a result of that interruption, I had a gap in time, and I had already met a lot of people at the institutions, the universities, so on and so forth. So I just expanded that relationship and started working on the resource because it had been altered, and so etiquette is etiquette is etiquette. Well, if it's to people or to the resource, and there's we probably, we got more heavily involved in the resource than we did in the etiquette for a while, and especially the oyster issue. That's got its own life, and you don't have enough time for me to tell you my feelings about that. But I watched, but I'm gonna.
Okay.
I'll try to condense it down.
Okay.
And in my fishing, I'm a big student of water levels and currents and all of those issues that yield good fishing or bad fishing or change. We had an anomaly in the harvest season, oyster harvest season of 2016, 2017, of an abnormal water level that lingered for the whole, November through April of 2017. And that water level combined at the same time with the arrival of this fleet of oyster boats came in to St. Charles Bay, which had never been harvested before, and devastated it. And I don't care what you say, harvesting an oyster is no more than strip mining for a resource. And so as they degraded the height of that structure above the bottom, they altered this bay. Well, I got real disturbed, so I went and talked to Dr. Christopher Mace, takes part from my life, and I said, what do y'all use to determine open closures of the season? And he told me it was based only upon size. And I'm going like, well, there are a lot more important functions of the oyster than to eat. So at his office, I got a glimpse of a satellite image, and I went off and I thought, what did I just see? I just saw something. What is it? And I noticed that 5 reefs in the Mesquite Bay complex, Carlos Reef, Cedar Reef, third chain, Ayers Reef, and the second chain of islands, were actually baffles that ran from the barrier island to the mainland. So I go like, my God, those are levees in a rice field. They alter a trap, they direct, they slow the movement of water from San Antonio Bay all the way through that complex. So I got really disturbed. It was in 2017. I have not slept all night long since 2017. I
Oh
wake up
no.
at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'd be so angry. I'm going like, they're out there strip mining these baffles, and if that happens, then they're going to forever alter the way water moves through this system, and they're going to cause erosion like we've never seen, and it's irreversible. And so I got off on that tack, met with everybody I could, partnered with Dr. Jennifer Pollock at Heart Research, partnered with CCA, and who are great friends. We don't have competing organizations. That doesn't happen. But we all came together and asked for it was a unique accomplishment. I'm gonna tell you, I've seen a lot of conservation efforts, But that one right there is one of the greatest in the history of this state. It
Hmm.
is. It did so much to protect this resource. That area up there is the heart of the Aransas, Coconut, St. Charles, San Antonio Bay, Mesquite Bay complex. And it has everything to do with our water quality and the health of this system. And so we all came together and got that done. Flatsworthy has gained a lot of recognition as a result of that effort, because it was, I'm gonna tell you, I started that baffle reef deal, but we all of us finished it. It was no single group or individual could do that. It took everybody coming together. So that's my Flatsworthy deal, part of it. CCA, you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, go for it. But before we change the subject, though, so Flatsworthy is a nonprofit organization, right? And
Correct.
what's like the overarching goal of Flatsworthy? What does it try to accomplish?
Protect the resource.
Okay. All right. That's perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfectly understandable too. Okay, so
I
yeah.
got I got a great video. If you go to our website, you'll see the first video I did it with Jace Tunnel, I did it with UTMSI, Katie
Hmm.
Swans, and it's called Protecting the Resource. And at that point in time, I I had seen so much destruction to the vegetation on San Jose Island. I said, well, I'm not going to be quiet again. I'm going to take it
Yeah.
forward. So we went in and did a 7-minute video on San Jose Island using all the resources that we could garner to prove a point and to demonstrate the value uh, of vegetation. So all of this just kind of feeds into the objectives. I,
Okay.
I, I lost my train of thought, maybe.
That's all right. I'll bring you back here in a minute. But
Yeah.
so, yeah. And so, for anybody who's interested, we interviewed both Dr. Jennifer Pollock about oysters and oyster reef restoration in our first season. And also, Jay's Tunnel was one of our very first interviews, maybe, number 5, somewhere around there. He talked to us about nurdles and nurdle pollution. So, for anybody who's interested, go back and check those out. But so let's bring it around to CCA. What is CCA?
Coastal Conservation Association. I
Okay.
have, it's all I can do to try to run Flatsworthy. So I have no role, and I'm a member of CCA. They had a predecessor organization called the Gulf Coast Conservation Association, which was formed in 1977. I tell all the young ones here, I was a member of your group before you were born. So I was a member like 240 in that group.
That's
And
great.
that group was brought together to fight the commercial harvest of redfish and trout. Seems like everything I get involved in is anti-commercial, and I don't mean it that way. I love those people. They work hard, but it's a resource that belongs to the people. And so it needs to be managed to the benefit of the people first, not towards somebody's pocketbook. So anyway, I met all of the people who founded GCCA, Walter Fondren and Dusty Rhodes, and just a myriad of other people. And I witnessed what was happening to the population of the fish here. So I jumped right in with them, became vice president of the organization. I worked hard on Lord, I came down to Corpus Christi, flew down on Walter's plane and started the chapter here. So, a long story. It was, I thought that battle to protect the trout and redfish would be easy, and it wasn't. That's just how naive I was. It was a big battle in Austin. But we got it done, and it forever changed the attitude about people towards conservation. because they saw if they stuck together, banded together, came together, and had the car, your cause has to be righteous before before it's going to work, and it was, and so that was accomplished. Now, there's a big difference. I said, protecting every trout and redfish in this state is a bigger deal than protecting some oysters in Mesquite Bay. But the commercial fin fisherman getting trout and redfish, he didn't hurt the habitat. He didn't. He hurt the fish. The guys taking the oysters are killing this habitat. And there's a huge difference. And in the value of this conservation effort, I'm going to tell anybody, and if I'm wrong, but I'm not. This is a big deal. Yeah. Saving these reefs is huge. And again, we had 7,000 people write comments of support to the Parks and Wildlife. And those people have bought in. I mean, it was amazing the attitude that prevailed after we got this accomplished. And to the point where I felt a responsibility of those people to keep that narrative going. You don't end, you always have to maintain vigilance. Once you accomplish something, somebody's going to try to take it away from you. So you need to stay together. But we went right into the restoration of this, which is Jenny Pollock's forte. And we're now working on how to restore the damage to those reefs, to build them up as baffles. I mean, this is all I can show you on Google Earth, what's going on. But there's a lot of work, and we're doing it. We hosted a oyster summit in Port Aransas and got the stakeholders together, and then we keep working down. We had a field trip out there 2 weeks ago, and so we have a lot of work to do, but it's all worth doing. It really is.
So Chuck, it sounds like you've got two really big conservation projects that you've been working on. So the whole oyster and reef restoration, and then the reclassifying of redfish and trout as game fish. Could you sort of dive into both of those efforts and talk about what the process was to get to this endpoint we're at now for our listeners? I know you said it's a long story, but you said yourself that it was more difficult than you thought it would be. So it'd be great to hear a little bit about those efforts that you put in to get to the state you are now.
Well, all right. One thing, let me clarify that the trout and redfish issue has been accomplished. It was accomplished under House Bill 1000 in 1981. And they are game fish. They're not eligible to be commercially harvested. So that protection has been around for a good while. The oyster issue has been addressed. We created a sanctuary in Ayers, Mesquite, and Carlos Bays where there will be no commercial harvest. So that is a first. It is a true sanctuary area. The difficulty you encounter is that we see it from the perspective of a sportsman. And the person harvesting that has a commercial venture. He is connected to other commercial entities, fish houses, restaurants, bars, what have you. So your objections tend to come from the inland public. I always thought, to understand these issues, you need to get your feet wet. You need to come down here, squat down in this water and see what it's like and figure it out. How can you sit in Abilene and make a decision about this resource if you just read about it in a book. If you did that. So that becomes the difficulty when you're dealing with the legislature. There's a lot of oh, I'll be real nice and just say commercial interest in this thing. But I mean, these issues are, I mean, it's money. You're talking money. You're talking people's livelihoods, and we get that. But the value of your livelihood over my resource, no, I'm gonna take the resource. And so you know, you do things to try to mitigate that. You try to work on, look, what can we do to help you? But I don't want you doing this what you were doing anymore. So it's a complex social issue like everything else is right now. I don't know if I answered your question, but the difficulties are just that. I mean, it's life and money and sometimes the resource doesn't come up as number one important thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think you touched on it here, but this sort of transition of these coastal resources to being non-commercial, it sounds like you had mixed feedback from different groups. Was it overwhelmingly positive in the end, or did you end up seeing eye to eye with some of these commercial industries that, maybe weren't so happy at first?
Well, that's a great question. And I've tried to go meet with them. I have met with them. I'm on a work group of 5 commercials and 5 people from the resource end of this thing. And I don't quite, I think they will. they want to go about their business and want to be left alone. They actually feel like the ones I'm dealing with, they feel like it belongs to them. And as long as and I've written some things and put them out, that just call it out. I mean, you just can't beat around the bush on this stuff. They need to see that certain of these reefs have a value to the resource that you cannot replace. That the value of the product is beyond $1, and that over time, the overharvest, and that's exactly what it was, is total overharvest. They're going to be out of business anyway.
Sure.
Then you have on the other side of this thing, I'm going to retreat. I'm going to say that you cannot control Mother Nature. You cannot control pollution, but you can control or attempt to control what man does in a negative sense to this habitat. So don't waste my time talking about hurricanes. They're going to happen and they're going to hurt things. Can't do a thing about it. Don't tell me about drought. I can't do a thing about it. I can try to do something about what we're doing that has a negative effect on it. I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that was great.
So you've been a fishing guide since 92, I think. You've probably seen a whole lot of changes from, we've talked about hurricanes, but just people flocking to the coastal region and all the changes that brings about. What's the biggest, if you could put your finger on one specific thing, what is the biggest change that you've seen over time?
well, I want to preface this, when you get to talking about these issues, some of your detractors, and I got people who really, really don't like me. Okay, let's just get that on the table. I mean, they don't like me. You don't, and so they say, well, he's just a bitter old man. Okay, well, I'm old. And that's the bitter part, there's butter, bitter, better, I don't know. But so when you talk about any of these things, I don't see anything now that's better than it was when I started.
Okay.
I think the biggest change is probably in the number of people coming down here. And I'm going to tell you, I do not own one drop of water or one grain of sand. I'm not about to tell anybody not to come down here. I'm glad that they're coming down here, because that's how, in the end, you get people to come and help you in these issues. But they're making more boats, but they're not making any more water. And we all, through our actions, affect wildlife. I'm sure you know that better than I do. And so we're changing the habits of the fish. We've taught them not to do some things already. There used to be gigantic schools of redfish here, and we've taught them not to do that, because if you do, we're going to catch you and we're going to take you home and put you in the grease. So I think all of the changes go down to how many of us are here, and welcome, come in. Our only deal is think about what you're doing. We go back to the deal. There's a lot of activities here: burning shorelines, cutting people off, running over, get too close. Our statement is, don't do things in your course of fishing that aren't necessary to your success, that negatively affect somebody else. We have to think about what we're doing.
That's great. Yeah. That's good advice too. Now, as far as advice for people who are trying to catch that delicious dinner, what's your best piece of fishing advice?
Oh, I'm a big believer in water level, current, wind direction. My advice is, and I guess I have a couple of my people come down here, and new people come in and they say, I want to go learn these bays. And I tell them, don't do that. You pick an area that you like and you go learn that area under every circumstance. And what you learn by focusing on one of your pastures and your ranch, you can translate to every other one of these bays, because you will learn over time that water level adjustment, and tide are going to all affect your fishing. So go when it's good, go when it's bad. It's all fishing. And fishing is not always about catching. And only keep what you're going to eat that night. Don't freeze or burn them. They're too precious.
Oh, that is good advice.
That is great advice. I'm a novice fisher, Chuck, so I would throw those bad boys in the freezer. I'm glad you said that.
Well, you see this the culture of posting on social media of these meat hauls, and you're glad that there's that many fish here, and which there aren't. That freeze hurt us really bad, worse than people want to talk about, but that's a whole different topic. But the best fish, I tell people all the time, the best fishing trip is when you learn something that will help you on the next one. Not how many you caught. What did I learn today? What did I learn to do? What did I learn not to do? And that's a good fishing trip right there.
In that same vein, Chuck, learning what to do next time, what not to do next time, for all of our fishing enthusiasts and our young listeners who might want to be a fishing guide one day, in addition to that advice you just gave, do you have any other advice?
Yeah. Go get a degree and learn a trade, and have that as a backup, because when you get a freeze, you'll have something you can fall back on. Don't
Okay.
come down here and be a guide and end up looking like I do right now. Good God about it. But no, I mean, it's a great way of life. It's not, if this is probably, I'll be sorry I said this. I wouldn't enter it right now. There's just too many crazy things and too much bad action going on. And you go get a $90,000 boat, a $90,000 truck, and you got payments on it, and this a hard go in this day and time. That freeze really, it hurt the fish population up here. Fish do what fish do. They school up, they get together. People say, "Oh, I caught." There's plenty of fish, and no, there isn't. No, there isn't. How many places did you go to and catch nothing before you found that unlucky school of fish that you hammered?
Yeah. So when you say the freeze, are you talking about Winter Storm Uri in February 22?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that was a big deal. And so that's still affecting the fish populations?
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
I've been through 3 of those events. The freeze. See, when you're old, at least you get to talk about it. Well, Sonny, I was there. 1983, we had a horrible freeze. 89, we had a worse. They were far worse than the last.
Really?
Well, St. Charles Bay was frozen over. I mean,
Oh.
I can't tell you how much ice was in the Space System for weeks afterwards, over with. I caught fish that had bruises on the top of their head from swimming underneath the ice trying to get to the sunlight. They were trying to warm up, So no, those were big things. But I'm just going to go by and make this statement. People say, what's the difference between the last freeze and the freeze of 83 and 89? And my answer is the people who tried to overcome it were better sportsmen in general back then than they are now. And, criticize me for that, but it's the damn truth. Pardon me for saying that. I mean, you have to be a good steward for this place to survive, and that comes from your heart and what you think about the resource. This is not about pictures to hang up and brag about. This is about learning and keeping this resource. We do a lot of work with kids. We support the 4-H groups in Calhoun and Aransas County. We have kid fish days. I've got kids on my board. When I say kids, they're in elementary school. If we go do all of this work and all of us are old timers, who's going to follow up? I mean, what's it for?
Right.
But on my tombstone, the guy had tried to help I want somebody to come behind me with the same love for this place.
So is that your message to young enthusiasts, to be good stewards of the resource in part?
And to speak out. We buy rod and reels. I'm working with Nueces County now to start a sport fishing group there in the 4-H. So yes, you have the youth are so important in the future of our resource. We have to embrace them and give them credibility. That's all there is to it.
It's great to hear that you've got a lot of outreach already with the young kids, getting them out and getting them. I'm guessing they go out with you guys on the boats, or do you start small, just teaching them how to?
We team with the AgriLife group.
Okay.
It's an A&M AgriLife. You got competent people. You got RJ Shelley in Calhoun County. You got Megan Glidden here and Pat Cruz in Aransas County. And I forget the gentleman's name in Nueces County. But these people, that's what they do. So what we do is support them. And I'm not, whatever we need to do, we buy this and we buy that, and just come to us. That's part of our life. As Lanceworthy is the resource and kids and eliminate jackassery and education and we got a lot of really good videos on our website. People go there and navigate around. So, yep.
We'll have to get your website before we let you off. But one of our favorite questions is biology blender. So you work out on the water, you work with fish, you work with young people, you work with some colorful characters, it sounds like. So has anything ever happened when you've been out doing your job that was kind of funny, didn't go exactly how you wanted it to go, what ended up being okay, but it was a funny story after the fact?
Well, probably need to have a beer to answer that. But I can only think of funny things that happen with people. And, as far as a funny event, it just that doesn't come to mind. And the thing that does come to mind is some of the characters that came down here that can be nameless and the things that happened to them. But I have to answer, no. I'm
No,
always too serious.
you don't have an example of
Of what?
of one of these interesting characters that can
Oh yeah, I do. I mean,
remain
if you want to
nameless.
hear that part of my life, yeah, I got
Yeah,
about
Sure,
I'll
yeah,
take it.
yeah.
But I've for every funny story, there's a story of accomplishment too, and
Yeah.
that's equally as important. But I had probably 94, 5, oh, 94 or 95. I had this person, I have probably still around, I don't know. Person come down here, and I was told that there was a pretty big ego involved here, and to be prepared for a character. So I won't say where he was from, but he comes down here and we meet up. And he walked into, I had a place I met my clients at called Cocoa Provision Company, which is a really neat little store up here in Holiday Beach. And so I'll walk in and I am so embarrassed. That guy he has dressed beyond anything I've ever seen in my whole life. He comes in and he has these shorts on that come to his knees, which was okay. And he had this khaki shirt, starched khaki shirt with the shirt tail out. And he had this Texas flag bandana, huge, tied around his neck, down his back. And I don't remember, I couldn't get past that to see what kind of hat he had on, but I'm sure it was some Wilson hat. So we go through the customary introductions. And so we get out in the bay, and this is in August, okay? Hot August.
A little warm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So he puts a pair of waders on. And I'm going like, okay, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm wearing waders. And I said, well, okay. I mean, we always went barefooted out there. And so he gets out of the boat and he's got these big clunky waders on. He's got all this flag all over him and this hat. And he steps out of the boat, stands there, goes to take a step, and face plants right down in the mud. And so glasses, shirt, he comes up and it's just like he's been in a pig pen. So,
Oh no.
I'm sorry. It was funny. It really was. I had another one real similar to that, but I'm not going to go into it.
Use
But
a big bandana to wipe the mud off.
Right.
So I don't know. If you gave me enough time, I think of something else humorous. But it's just, I think of more in terms of the people who came down here. Fly fishing is a hard thing. And when you're learning, it's a real challenge. And the people who worked hard and endured maybe for 2 or 3 days and finally caught their fish, and what a wonderful thing that was. So I can tell you lots of those stories where you you really bond with people,
Yeah.
you know. So
Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm sure there are hundreds, maybe thousands of accomplishment stories. Fly fishing is hard. So I can't imagine the kind of patience that it would take to teach that too.
well, it's I don't know. You better be a people person, and you better be a coach. And people always talk about me being harsh and all that, but that's how you get there. You don't win some of these battles by being nice and pansy and all that. Look, if you want to do this, you're gonna have to step up to the line.
That's
And
right.
in the end, they're gonna be happy. And in the meantime, you're ugly. You're nasty. So,
Yeah.
but that's what I think about. I think about the people who didn't have the talent to do it, but they did it because
That's
they
right.
didn't quit. That's
Yeah.
one of my mantras. You don't win unless you try, and you don't lose unless you quit. So there you are.
I like that.
That's true. Very true. Well, is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners?
Yeah. A lot of things you probably don't have enough time, but I think that we're fortunate to live in an arena to where we have so many wonderful institutions, uh, people who care about this resource. And so when these problems come up, you don't have to go to Illinois to get the answer. I mean, you go to Port Aransas, you can go to Corpus, you can deal with people who are really knowledgeable, who are gifted, who are smart, who will welcome you into their world. And I just love them. I do. We're just lucky.
We are. Yeah, in South Texas and the whole coastal bend. I mean, it's just a really special place.
Well, it is. Totally.
That's terrific. Well, thank you so much for spending time with us. It's been great to hear all about the game fish, hear more about the oyster problem. It's been very eye-opening to me, and I appreciate you being here.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. I really do. That's how you get things done. And every once in a while you're told, look, you're off base, and you go like, boom, da, da, da. But then you go, okay, well, I'll think about it. I'll change my ways. So we all have to work together. And if we do, we can make this a better place.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much. And remember, don't feed the wildlife.